Hey everyone, we are moving on to chapter 9 and we will just jump right in. I'll put up my disclaimer and then we're going to go into me reading chapter 9 from the Residue of Trauma Learned Helplessness book. We'll review the handout briefly and then we'll go right into the magnetic mind session to integrate anything that gets triggered while you're listening to the audiobook. Residue of Trauma, Learned Helplessness, Chapter 9. The Tyranny Within, Barriers to Self-Sovereignty. Quote, "A man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts, and so indirectly, yet surely, shape his circumstances." James Allen. Self-sovereignty, the belief in one's autonomy, capacity to exercise free will, lies at the core of human dignity and fulfillment. Yet this sense of agency can be eroded by learned helplessness. The interplay between learned helplessness and self-sovereignty reveals insight into the barriers people face when reclaiming autonomy over their lives. Losing self-sovereignty as a child is a deeply painful experience, resulting from factors that limited a child's ability to express themselves freely, make decisions independently, or develop a strong sense of personal identity. All of this shapes an individual on their path to adulthood. Often the strongest emotions to overcome are rage and apathy. The emotional barrier of apathy saps the strength needed to assert autonomy and make meaningful life changes. On a social level, learned helplessness perpetuates a collective disempowerment. Media does this all the time. It thrives on negativity. If it isn't controversial, it isn't news. It can build an increase in mental health issues due to suppressed rage, continuous fear-driven media, and has caused burnout and apathy for many. Feeling like a real loss of control over one's life. Increased hostility towards each other and inconsistent or no support rips away at everyone's self-sovereignty. Many individuals are finding the path to rebuilding their life challenging during so many strong, polarizing life events. It can be hard to hold one's truth when challenged or threatened for having a different point of view, or while watching others be punished for standing their ground. We can lose the happy place in our heart. When individuals believe they have lost control, they might disengage from the decision-making process altogether. Others will fight to the death because they don't feel they have anything else to lose. These are opposite ends of the same issue. How does one find their way back to their truth, their center? Escaping with disempowering coping mechanisms can become a habit, mainly trying to get some relief from the inner tension that is building. Disengaging strips an individual of the practice required to develop and continue self-agency, reinforcing the dependency on external forces to dictate their lives. The reliance on disempowering coping mechanisms. I often notice this type of disengagement as an invasion of different energies within a person's energy field. I can tell they are just trying to get through the day. My goal is to build a path to reclaim self-sovereignty if it has been lost or crushed. It is a journey of self-discovery, new skills, and empowerment. It requires self-reflection to reconnect to your inner strength, intuition, values, and action. In a world that wants to influence individuals in various less than healthy ways, and in the extreme encourages individuals to freely give up one's own power. I offer a path to rediscover who you want to be. While the path of reclaiming self-sovereignty is deeply personal, There are several key steps and practices that can guide the process. Self-awareness and reflection. Reflecting on how and when you lost your sense of sovereignty. Was it due to external influences or an internal struggle? External influences include society, family, relationships, trauma, sometimes religion. Internal struggles include self-doubt, fear, addictions, and disempowering coping skills. Understanding this root cause will give you clarity. If revisiting the past is too painful, examining current beliefs and patterns that have led to feeling disconnected from life is enough to get started. Every negative emotion you suffer from today was put there from the past. It can be rewired to a new elevated emotion. This can include self-limiting beliefs, people-pleasing tendencies, unexpressed grief, or a history of disregarding personal needs and desires. A deep acceptance of where one is starting from and the ability to acknowledge in what direction one wants to move is a powerful place to start. This will allow the development of a personal game plan that can be put into action. Live with integrity. As an individual continues to align their actions and decisions with their inner truth, life becomes more fulfilling. Stress is experienced when an individual is living outside of their core values. Integrity is at the heart of self-sovereignty. Feeling one's inherent value when facing challenges and continuing to take action steps, no matter how small, is powerful progress. It sounds easier than it is. Living by one's values doesn't mean trying to get others to agree. It's a state of interdependence without being dependent on how others act. During the last 5 years, many people have come face to face with devastating losses. This forced many into deep self-reflection and growth, and others into a negative downward spiral. It brought some families closer together and completely pulled other families apart. I hope to bring much needed relief and clarity to those who are wanting to develop better self-sovereignty in life, no matter what is going on around them. A simple daily practice is to have learning snacks and exercise snacks. As much time that is spent on the internet, social media, etc., many have the opportunity for learning snacks. Instead of losing time watching cute cat videos, as cute as they are, take 20 minutes a day to learn a new skill. Cooking, cleaning, exercising, singing, investing. Anything can be learned in 20-minute chunks. Then watch the cute cat videos. I used to do my taxes in 10-minute intervals because I hated doing my taxes. I have found the people who have the most skills develop the most resiliency and self-sovereignty. As an individual develops more skills, they naturally develop self-confidence, accountability, improved relationships, better finances, and a strong sense of authenticity. Self-sovereignty does not mean isolation. It can strengthen communities by fostering collaboration, voluntary relationships based on mutual trust, and shared goals. Practical applications of self-sovereignty come with the form of blockchain-based systems that allow individuals to own and manage their own digital identities. Self-directed learning enables people to tailor education to their goals and their interests. Personal sovereignty enables individuals a stronger sense of control over their health and vitality by enhancing autonomy, privacy, and a feeling of control. Self-sovereignty empowers people to live more intentionally, fulfilling, and balanced lives. This is the end of Chapter 9. How was Chapter 9 for you? So for many people, this can be a challenge on learning how to make continuous I don't know if you want to say inspired action steps towards what they want, not so much what everybody else wants. I definitely was in the category of the people pleaser. I can remember when I was 12, my grandmother kind of, took me by the chin and kind of leaned into my face and said, "Honey, if they didn't ask, you're meddling." And I think it took me until, oh my God, my 40s until I stopped meddling. So, I've been there. It can be very challenging to continue following your heart's desires and what works for you. I knew I had outgrown that pattern when one day a dear friend of mine was like, "You really don't care what other people think." And I said, "No, I care what other people think." I said, I do. I care about what they think and how they feel." And she's like, "No, you don't." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" So we had this conversation and it dawned on me what it was is I was no longer people pleasing, and the people who benefited from that kind of like they didn't like the new behavior. And because I realized that, I thought, "Oh, no, I get it. I still care about what other people think and how they feel, but it's not going to change my behavior. I'm going to continue doing what works for me because it's my lived life." And it was very interesting when I stopped the people pleasing. It was making decisions for my growth, my improvement, my happiness. It was surprising how many people just kind of faded out of my life because when you're not taking action steps for your dreams, your desires, and what works for you. And I don't mean this in a selfish way by any means, but you have to have a part of your life that's just for you and nobody else. Some people it's going to the gym, some people it's like some kind of a like doing crafts or arts, but it's whatever that is. For me, it was traveling for a while. I traveled just for me. If somebody wanted to come with me, that was great, but even if they didn't, I was gonna go anyway. So, to be able to stand the test of time, some part of your life has to be just for you, and you may or may not share that part of life with anybody else. Okay, so again, maybe too many words, but let's move on to the handout. So we can go through the questions. And again, we're just wanting to bring it up in the active experience. And what are you noticing in your body? So take a deep breath, kind of settle in, reflecting on what you just heard in the chapter, and focusing on the body. How are you feeling in the body? Maybe some memories have come up. Then we're just going to go through it. I'm going to ask these questions. And again, you can write it down on the worksheet or a blank piece of paper. Where do you feel powerless? These are often the areas in life where we just keep trying to do stuff and it's just not happening. And I want you to understand there's no right or wrong answers to these questions. It's whatever's true for you. Because sometimes I've noticed people will have a challenge with this kind of work because they're putting down answers. They're not being honest with themselves. They're putting down answers that maybe, their parents would want to hear, society would want to hear. Because sometimes when we're really true with ourselves, we're being really honest with ourselves, the answers aren't very pretty sometimes. That's what you want to put down on the sheet. So who or what blocks your progress? And this is a really good one. What makes you angry? And where do you feel out of alignment in your life? Is there some area in life that just feels a little wonky? It could be relationships. Maybe it could be finding that perfect food plan for you. It could be friendships, just what feels a little wonky, and write those down. And again, we're just going to have you focus on your feeling, what thoughts are coming up for you, where do you notice it in your body? Is there a tightness in your body? What are the thoughts and feelings? And just let that all come into the active experience, because as it comes into the active experience, then when we go into the audio session, the superconscious, which works with your subconscious mind, is going to correct that for you. You don't have to do anything except focusing on the feelings and what's coming up for you. What I also notice for people who have a challenge with this kind of work is they're doing the audios and they're trying to make something happen. And that's not the best approach. You just want to be curious, be in the flow, allowing what comes up, even if it's kind of uncomfortable, so that the superconscious can get your subconscious mind to harmonize that for you. And that's what provokes the biggest change. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and go into Chapter 9's audio. Hi, this is Gina, and we are moving on to Chapter 9. Celebrate the fact that you have stuck with it and you are doing the work to make your life better. After you've downloaded your journal tracker sheet, again, we're going to have you tap into how are you feeling before the session. How does your body feel? How are your emotions? And you can jot that down on your tracker sheet. A lot of people like to use the 0 to 10. 10 is amazing. 0 is life sucks. But you could be anywhere in between. And as you bring to mind what you want to work on after reading Chapter 9, again, what are those things that you do right now that are working for you? Making your life easier. And write those down, because when we can acknowledge the things we are doing right, the brain keeps looking for more of that. And you can pause the audio at any time if you need more time to write down things. And as we move on to the next section, what are the things you would like to create in your life? What are those things you would like to experience? What new emotions, what new behaviors would you like to bring into your life? And that's what you could write in the next box on your tracker sheet. And again, I'll add the disclaimer, I am not a medical professional and I offer no advice. Using any resources off of my website, you as the user take all responsibility for your mental health decisions and choices and behaviors. And as we move into the magnetic mind session, I ask permission to work with your superconsciousness. Is superconsciousness are you there? Yes. So closing your eyes, taking a few deep breaths, bringing your attention inward. And we're going to start with the first question. Where do you feel powerless? Where are those places in life that you shrink away, you feel small? The superconsciousness, as they bring this into their active experience, I ask you to treat it with a massive history change and everything after that. Reinforcing intuition, reinforcing self-trust. Again, treating all parts, predispositions, and associations to and with this feeling of powerless. When you feel powerless, or you're thinking about situations where you felt powerless, what is the reaction in your body? How does your body respond to it? Just allow those sensations to come up. The superconsciousness, please treat all judgment and meaning associated to and with these sensations in the body. And when appropriate, do a massive history change and everything after that. Just breathing and noticing. And again, we're going to focus on the emotions. What other emotions are present when you feel powerless? Maybe it's a specific event that comes to mind. Maybe it's a specific emotion. And as you bring that into the conscious awareness, superconsciousness, please treat this on all levels, treating the complex structure of this event, this emotion, the way the body responds, and treat it with a massive history change and everything after that. Bringing in self-empowering emotions, self-empowering memories, and self-empowering coping mechanisms. Reinforcing all parts, positive emotions, positive feelings, and positive coping mechanisms. And when that's complete, do a massive history change and everything after that. We're going to move on to the next question. Who or what do you feel blocks your progress? Do you feel you do it to yourself? Who do you blame it on? Who stands in your way? And as you bring that into your conscious experience, again, superconsciousness, treat all of this with a massive history change and everything after that. Again, breathing and noticing. And how do you know when you feel blocked? What is that body sensation? What are the emotions that come up where you feel stuck, blocked, stagnant, maybe shut down? Really be honest with yourself, noticing the body sensations, what thoughts and feelings run through your mind. With super consciousness, treat all of that with a massive history change and everything after that. Treating all chakras, the front and back, treating the vessels of the body. With a massive history change and everything after that. Treating each vessel one right after another in an interactive recursive formula, bringing in understanding, bringing in the ability to see their part of the equation. Because when we can see our part of the problem, our part of the equation, that's the part we can shift. Superconsciousness reinforce that. And then when appropriate, do a massive history change and everything after that. And the next one we're going to move on to is what makes you angry? Anger is a primordial emotion. You know, things like anger, disgust, joy, contempt, they're all primordial. You could go to any place on the planet and everyone has the exact same facial expression and often visceral response to those emotions. And many times anger is a cover emotion. So superconscious go in and do a diagnostic where they're using anger as a cover emotion, as a protective mechanism, instead of a fuel for change, a fuel for action. Treating all corresponding body parts, and when ready, do a massive history change and everything after that. Treating all physiologies, biochemistries, treating all areas in the brain, and then do a massive history change and everything after that. And as we move on to the final question, where do you feel out of alignment in life? Do you feel out of alignment with your body? Maybe with your job? Maybe you feel out of alignment with your friends or your emotions. Just pick one area because, you can do this audio over and over. Where do you feel out of alignment with your life? The superconsciousness, as they bring this into their active experience, their conscious awareness, treat all of it with a massive history change and everything after that. Treating all emotions, treating all overcompensations, treating all exterior validation, reinforcing interior and personal validation. And when ready, align them with their true self, bringing in their own intuition, aligning their chakras so they can align with their true self, even if it's just a little bit in the heart center, bringing in those energies of who they truly are, letting them acknowledge their uniqueness, that they are here for a reason, to share their unique gifts, talents, perspective, and experiencing their lived life. The superconsciousness, when they're ready, also align them with their physical body, treating any resistance to being in physical form, treating any resistance to them being who they truly be. And when appropriate, tag and treat everything with a massive history change and everything after that. The superconsciousness, help them call in all parts that are ready to come home, that are ready to integrate with the main identity, but maybe didn't know how, wasn't sure. The superconsciousness, educate them on that. All parts that are treated, removing trauma and pain, as the goal is to increase satisfaction in life and to decrease pain. All parts that are ready to integrate, they can integrate with the main identity easily and smoothly, sharing the memories of the main identity. Again, the goal is to align with their authentic, true self, who they really are, minus all of the conditionings, all of the hypervigilance, all of the people pleasing, and all of the overcompensation. And when ready, do a massive history change and everything after that. And again, breathing and noticing. Bring your attention to the heart. Really allow yourself to come home and anchor in that heart center. For our heart frequencies are way stronger than our brain frequencies. The superconsciousness, treating the nervous system to embrace who we really are. Treating all physiology, treating all emotions, treating the fear of rejection, self-rejection, or the rejection of others. And when ready, do a massive history change and everything after that. And superconscious, when ready, begin the closing procedure. And again, if there was anything we didn't have an opportunity to treat from the last session till now, if it's appropriate, treat that now. And also anything between this session and the next session, take it and trade out any disempowering emotions, feelings, or memories for self-empowering emotions, feelings, memories, and coping mechanisms. And again, everything we've touched today, we're going to anchor it back into the matrix of the universe. Taking a deep breath. And with your permission, we will close the session. And how was chapter 9 for you? I'm always amazed because as I was listening to this, it was recording. And I apologize if there's too many bumps in this audio. We've got I wouldn't say it's a blizzard going on outside, but you might be hearing some banging and swooshing going on, or the furnace kicking on. Anyway, I'm always amazed when I listen to these audios again, because even while I was going through this, listening to it as it was recording for this video, I did have a memory of when I was a kid and I would get picked on because I had to wear like an eye patch for I don't know how long when I was a kid. Because I'm considered legally blind in my right eye because they don't, is it converge? Something like that. Anyway, it was interesting because it was a pretty intense memory of when the kids would pick on me. And I can't remember which question it was. maybe what makes you angry or whatever. And I got this image of when they would pick on me on how I would go and like literally turn myself towards the, because it was a big brick school, kind of like wedge myself in the corner so my back would be to them, just to like, because it was just too intense, like to block them out or whatever. Kind of like when you see dogs in the shelter where they're like, nose into the corner. So that one was a little intense for me on this one. So it's really surprising. It just amazes me, even though these audios, I've used them over and over. You just never know when you're going to hit that next level of a memory, an emotion, a body sensation that comes up and it's ready to be dealt with. Because a lot of times our nervous system has to be ready to kind of process it for us. That's why more of this work isn't necessarily better. But again, leave me a comment on how it was for you, what you noticed came up for you, and again, even more importantly, let me know those things that aren't shifting for you, or for some reason it still keeps coming up. Maybe it's a memory that keeps coming up, maybe it's a desire that keeps coming up, and you're just not able to get that shifted. Those are the ones that I really want to know so I can make content around those. And I will see you in the next video.